YouTube, what the crap's going on? Skag the Stream Lags here. No, I'm just kidding. HeirofCarthage, but I was under the name Skag the Stream Lags, which is actually one of the characters off of my dwarf campaign, which I thought would be fun. And speaking of dwarves, look at this dwarf army ready to shoot me to bits. I brought kind of an odd Empire army here, but it had a purpose. The Luminarch was obviously to pick off high-value targets of the dwarves from range. The cannons were in case he had his own cannons, which he does, which as a dwarf player I think at least one is a pretty smart move because it gives you long range. And an organ gun was certainly a concern of mine, and he certainly does have an organ gun. You can see his cannons actually get the shots off first. Mine have a longer range, and honestly I should have deployed them back a little bit because I'm not taking advantage of that range. His cannons will be more accurate, and I believe they're going to have just overall a little bit better effect even though they're shorter range. So again, mistake on my part to not capitalize on the range. Now let's go check out the rest of my army. I've got an Empire captain up here on the Griffin. I've got 4 great swords, 2 on each flanks with their fun looking hats and stuff. Here they are. Some of them have like that weird hat on it. Whatever that thing's called. There they go. So yeah, I've got 2 swordsmen and 2 great swords on each flank. I'm going to send my captain to support that flank. Over here, I made a huge mistake of wandering within range of his organ guns, and organ guns are seriously dangerous at this point in the game, especially whenever I had my flank turned to it like that. I'm going to take some pretty hefty damage here. The penetration on the organ gun is very, very good. Very dangerous war machine. It is quite expensive, but considering the damage it can dish, 1,000 is a pretty good price for it. It does make your army immobile though, so there's a price to pay from having it. I back out of his range, but he does some great damage to my men there. I've got a Demigryph Knight, which is hugging the edge of the map to stay away from his cannons, and then I've got this Luminarch of Hysh out here as well that's hanging with the Demigryphs. And I realized once I picked this army, I was like, oh crap. I was like, if he picks gyrocopters, I am screwed. The only thing I can chase them with is my Empire General, but fortunately for me, he didn't. Still going to be a very difficult fight. To try and rid myself of his organ guns is going to be a difficult task at this point. My cannons are getting a little bit of damage done, fortunately. Like I said, a little bit, but he's actually, wow, man. These organ guns shooting from further away than I would have thought. They're hitting my my great cannon at this point. I didn't pay near enough attention to the range on this stuff, so my Luminarch of Hysh is pulled up into position and actually did take a shot, I believe. Yeah, and it hit his Dwarf Lord, which at this point is Ungrim Iron Fist. So Ungrim took a pretty nasty shot. You can see the explosive damage right there that it did. And the Luminarch is a very, very dangerous artillery unit at this point. It's been buffed considerably. Let's see if Ungrim gets away in time. He goes to hide in the woods. He takes another nasty shot from the Luminarch that hits some of his own men too, so Ungrim is in serious trouble, and pulling him out of this fight is going to be important because the Dwarves have a very strong defensive bunch of units here. They've got some Dwarf Warriors coupled with a couple of Longbeards, which will support morale, and there's a couple of Slayers up here too. And Slayers are not great against infantry, but considering what I have here, they'll probably be pretty tough. I used my Luminarch to pop one shot here in on his artillery just because his general was actually hidden from me at the moment. I couldn't see him, and I wanted to make sure that he had to focus, and sure enough, his cannons are like, alright, you want to play that game, Luminarch? They're going to turn around and they're going to open fire on my Luminarch, so I have to start running. Unfortunately, again, I was close enough for the organ gun, and my Luminarch does get hit really hard here, and it actually gets routed, though it's probably going to come back into the fight, which is good because I still have 7 ammunition left on it, but it takes a nasty, savage beating there. So these Orc artillery unit, or these Dawi artillery units, or Dwarf artillery units, are really causing me trouble. I do have 1 cannon unit still alive. This one's going to come back from routing. I'm going to put them back on their guns, and they're going to keep firing. This cannon's got 35 kills, 44 on that one. The Luminarch's got 24 kills, even though it's mostly been targeting the Dwarf Lord. I'm going to bring in my Demigryph Knights. He's going to want to chase them with his Slayers since they have a bonus versus large. And I'm going to bring in my Empire Captain, and I'm going to try and get around the arc of fire on some of his artillery and come in and silence these organ guns before they wreck my whole army, because they are a very dangerous unit. And you can see them actually firing away at some of my great swords here, which is a very good target for them. I'm going to have to basically sacrifice my Demigryph Knights. I don't really look forward to this, but I have got to do some pretty serious damage to his ranged units, because if not, they're going to kill my Empire Captain very quickly. You can see them already working on it. The Thunderers have some nice armor-piercing damage, so I'm going to target them rather than the Quarrelers. And my Demigryph Knights are going to cause substantial damage and tie up the Thunderers, though they themselves are going to mostly get killed as a result of this combat. I tried pulling them out right away, but I failed, and I ended up having to micro elsewhere. I think I just hit my own captain. Now, my own captain, though, has done a lot of damage to the artillery. It's kept it from firing, and the Demigryph Knights has badly damaged one of the Thunderers. This is also going to give my Luminarch a chance to get back into play. You can see his Quarrelers doing some very bad damage to my Empire Captain. They're a little bit vulnerable to flying units. I'm going to bring my Swordsmen in on this flank. I've got to put some pressure on the Dwarves. I do get away somewhat with my Demigryph Knights, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm trying to pull them away. His Slayers are giving them chase. Like I said, not a unit I really want to tangle with the Demigryph Knights, not unless I got a solid charge or something. I get my general away, and then Ungrim comes back out to play, gets very lucky there. The Luminarch just straight misses him. So very, very lucky for the Dwarf player at that point, or else that would have been the end of Ungrim. And he's going to take off running, and my Luminarch's going to attempt to get another shot. I've got 6 shots left. So my Swordsmen engage the Longbeards, and then over here my Great Swords are going to engage the Dwarf Warriors and Slayers, and then my Demigryph Knights are actually going to come back for a rear charge. So they'll get a little bit of damage done, though overall I'm not going to get a ton of kills with these Demigryph Knights, really, but I am going to do some pretty serious damage. They are taking a lot of fire from Quarrelers. It is definitely a viable way of dealing with Demigryph Knights. Quarrelers are an excellent skirmishing unit, and definitely a credit to the Dwarf faction. So Ungrim was hiding once again, so I decided to pop his skirmishers with the Luminarch, and the miss actually does some extra damage to my Demigryphs, so I think I ended up helping to rout my Demigryphs there, unfortunately. And my Great Swords are definitely a little bit outmatched here because of how many Dwarfs are around. But if you look at the Luminarch, 37 kills, not bad, and it's going to get some more kills before this is all said and done. My Great Swords and Swordsmen are holding on over here against the Dwarf Infantry. The Dwarf Infantry is not great, but they are more numerous than me in this vicinity, so they're going to outflank me. But I've got a whole other flank pouring in. And his Skirmishers did manage to rout my Empire Captain. But at this point, I've got all my infantry coming in, and I'm going to be able to pressure his Skirmishers out of the fight, and I've forced his Dwarf Lord back out of the fight. He's now being targeted by the Luminarch, and the Luminarch's going to take this shot. We'll see whether or not it's a hit. You can see it building, it hits a tree. So once again, Ungrim escapes his fate from the Luminarch. So the Luminarch didn't have the foresight to fire up and over the hill. This Great Sword unit here is tanking. It's got Swordsmen to kind of be a meat shield, and it's doing a spectacular job right now. 20 kills, but it is starting to take some damage from this rear charge on the Dwarf Warriors. But I have now busted through all these Skirmishers, chasing off the Quarrelers, who were otherwise doing a ton of damage. Their kills don't look high, but you got to remember what they chased off, which was a Demigryph Knight and the Empire Captain, 2 very high-value targets. Let's zoom into the fight and watch the Dwarves fight. Look, here comes another shot from the Luminarch. Definitely hit some of my own men there again, but I'm trying desperately to do as much damage as I can. This is actually a very close fight with the Dwarves. I feel like I have some chance here, but it's definitely going to be a tight fight. It's going to depend on who comes out victorious with this infantry and how much more damage my Luminarch can do at this point. And the Luminarch's about to take another shot. It has 64 kills. Let's see where it's going to fire. Here comes the shot, and it's into the... Wow, that shot busted right through the back of a lot of Dwarfs right there and racked up 40 kills in the process, so a pretty nice shot. My Swordsmen are giving way, my Great Swords are holding, and I've got reinforcements coming in the form of more Swordsmen, so the infantry fight is actually probably starting to tilt in my favor. I've chased off crossbows who are tired from firing. And at this point, the Dwarf player actually concedes defeat. I believe I had the victory here, but it was actually fairly close. I remember being concerned about whether or not I was going to pull this off during the actual battle, so I think he may have conceded a little bit early. But with the Luminarch around, I mean, Ungrim was definitely doomed to die. And that is what makes the Luminarch very dangerous in this patch. It's not just Lords. 105 kills here. You can see that it can do some serious damage to a blob of infantry as well. The Luminarch is a dangerous unit. Its downsides are that it's fairly easily killed if you can close the distance with it or use that longer range artillery like the Dwarfs did here. My great swords, obviously, definitely a match for a lot of the dwarf infantry. You can see they were doing fairly well for the most part. My swordsmen, not so much. Demigryph Knights got a decent number of kills for the kind of combat they were thrown into. I kind of had to throw these guys away. My General of the Empire doesn't look like he did great here, but he silenced a lot of that artillery. You all saw what that organ gun was doing. It would have killed me. This thing only got a few shots. It did horrendous damage, got 37 kills. Silencing his Thunderers before they could really do more here was key. These guys can just severely wreck you if they get left to late game and you don't have a way to counter them. Now, the problem for dwarf skirmishers is that dwarfs aren't fast, and after skirmishers fire on this game, they get tired. And so lighter or fairly light units like these swordsmen on foot can generally end up catching them. So late game's kiting by the dwarves can be difficult unless you have some support units to help out. But again, the Luminarch here actually being pretty important. That unit was kind of a joke in patch 1. It's no joke anymore. The thing does ridiculous damage. I mean, it does huge damage. It is very limited on ammunition, but I mean, just to give you a quick demonstration of the type of damage that this Luminarch can do. I've got Manfred von Karstein on his dragon and a Terrorgeist, which are close to the same cost as a Luminarch. And just let me give you all an example. They're not exactly the same cost, but you know they're close. And I just want you to see the type of damage these units can dish out. It is relatively extreme. And like I said, so the weakness of the Luminarch is it has a very slow reload time, so it's going to take it a very long time to reload, so you got to be careful about fast units closing the distance with it. It is not a strong unit in melee. It cannot really be used like a I'm going to actually deploy like this because von Karstein and the Terrorgeist deployed right on top of each other, which can possibly screw up my test here. But yeah, so you have to be able to close the distance to it or outrange it, which certain artillery units can do. It does have 300 range, which is pretty good. But like great cannons and stuff like that can definitely outrange it and make it more difficult. But again, the Luminarch is a pretty mobile artillery unit. I would say you're going to want to watch out for flying melee units that are quick, like a Vargeist or something. I'm going to target von Karstein here, and I'm going to target the Terrorgeist here. So let's watch as the Luminarchs fire, and let's just watch how much damage they do on the first shot, assuming it hits, which it should. So von Karstein gets absolutely drilled, about 40% of his health gone. And let's watch the Terrorgeist. I didn't get the shot off. That's frustrating. Let's rematch right here. I'm not sure why they didn't get the shot off. That was kind of weird. It's probably because I clicked the order rather than just let them shoot. Sometimes I have noticed that with the Luminarch, that it will sometimes do weird things when you click an attack order. So keep an eye on it. Let's just let the two of them sit here and I'll just show you what they can do. So start the battle. I'm just going to let these two things start immediately firing. That way I don't screw them up. So they may not target the way I want, but two Luminarchs against these two very powerful flying units, I'll just kind of give you an example here of what they can do. And the Luminarch shot does a lot of penetration, does explosive damage as well. You can see there von Karstein is going to be... He's got critical damage going on right now from that first shot. It looks like the only way I'm going to get to test this against the Terrorgeist is to actually pull the flying von Karstein out, because I can't seem to get a targeted shot. So let's take von Karstein on just the ground here. Again, I want to show you the damage that a Terrorgeist will take from something like this. Not that a Terrorgeist is a real commonly used unit, but again, this is just a good demonstration of hit points against a large creature, what it can do. And there's a lot of other units that the Luminarch can cause pretty extreme damage to. So I'm going to go ahead and take these guys off. Fire at will, shoot the Terrorgeist. Should get the shots off relatively easy, because it's in the cone of fire. Here it comes. This should be an instant kill on the Terrorgeist, unless the Terrorgeist just gets lucky. Yep. And sometimes one is enough to do it. So again, just be aware, Luminarchs are no joke anymore. They do have limited ammo, very limited. It looks like 10 ammunition is what they have. So be aware that you're only going to get so many shots, but those 10 shots, if used properly, can do an absurd amount of damage. Like really large amounts of damage. And I'm pretty sure Von Karstein's about to buy the farm right here, too. He didn't, amazingly enough. Well, yes, he did. He's disintegrating. So, there you go. Just to give you an idea about those Luminarchs. So, keep an eye on them. Be aware of them. I don't think it's OP because they're so expensive. But, I mean, don't ignore it. It can certainly do some damage to you. I haven't really tested how well it does versus moving targets, but supposedly one of the things that was patched is it made this thing a little more accurate. It also made it do a lot more damage, so be careful. HeirofCarthage signing out. I'll see you all next time.